The Sledgehammer by Victor T. Robinson II. There are infinite amounts of multiverse out in the galaxies. But the top 5 galaxies are Marvel, DC, Monsterverse, Amalgam, and the Dark Universe. Some of the themes of these worlds will not seem possible in these universes. Example, superheroes would be real in the Amalgam universe and not real in the Dark Universe. I am a cosmic being that has been around since the Big Bang. I can move through time and space at warp speed. God is the creator of Earth. But I am the creator of the sun, the moon, and the rest of the galaxies. I am the universe. Chapter 1. The Last Day on Earth. This is year 2019 in the Amalgam universe. There is a fight to save planet Earth from a cannibalism alien force called the Trilogy that goes between different worlds and universes, which is like the thing it's infected its hosts and turns them into more soldiers for the Trilogy. Half of the world has been infected by Trilogy, and whoever hasn't been infected is meat to them. Superheroes and supervillains from Marvel and DC who lived among each other for years and stayed out of each other's lives, but now have to team up to destroy the Trilogy. The Trilogy also has a twin brother buried underneath 60,000 leagues under the sea due a large earthquake and help from Aquaman's ancestors. They will fight the ultimate fight that will last months, but in the final days, the new Avengers has fallen. Batman, Robin, Catwoman, Aquaman, The Flash, The Punisher and the New Mutants, Lex Luthor, Deathstroke, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, Daredevil have all fallen to the Trilogy. The last heroes standing are Superman, Wonder Woman, badly wounded Thor and the Hulk, and a 23-year-old man named Cameron Ford who was the first human created in a lab by Dr. Yancey Ford under orders by Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross, who teams up with Lex Luthor to create the ultimate superhero by using stolen D.N.A. From the best superheroes, Cameron has Tony Stark's intelligence, Wolverine's regeneration and superhuman strength that's kinda close to Superman, and he can fly. Has many other superheroes in his DNA, but they lie dormant, X-ray vision, no laser, heightened senses. He was made for the government to be used as a silver bullet against any superheroes that get out of line. They called him the Sledgehammer. Cameron was trained by former members of the League of Shadows. Cameron has made a lot of enemies with the superheroes and the villains and even the people who created him, but Yancey who used her frozen eggs to make him. She is his mother, and he realized he has to band together with them to finish off the Trilogy. Cameron makes a desperate plan to save Earth. Superman is worried for Lois, who is about to have their first child, a son. Cameron looks around and realizes he is the only one expendable, so he wraps himself up with nuclear bombs and flies to the main part of the Trilogy while the rest of the superheroes and well-armed humans fight the Trilogy's infected soldiers. Cameron sees the true face of the Trilogy and gets the Trilogy to open its mouth, and Cameron takes of the nuclear bombs and throws in the mouth of the Trilogy, and it blows 2 heads off the body, but the other half is flying about out of the Earth atmosphere, and Cameron is overzealous and he goes after it while Superman and Wonder Woman tell him to come back. All the infected soldiers dissolved into nothing. Cameron is still flying after the rest of the Trilogy, and Cameron finds himself getting lightheaded. He realized he is in outer space and the Trilogy has gone away ahead of, and Cameron turns around and sees Earth is so far away and tries to fly back to Earth, but a large asteroid fly past Earth and is coming towards him, and Cameron is flying away from the asteroid and accident flies into a black hole. Cameron wakes up in a forest all covered in snow. Cameron takes a long walk from the forest trying to figure out where he is, and soon makes his way into town, and he sees he is in Anchorage, Alaska, and looking at a newspaper it's the year 1979. The black hole has taken him 40 years ago, but what he doesn't know is he is in a completely different world. The only thing Cameron has on him is his driver license, which does expire until 2024, which is a joke since it's 1979. It takes a while for him to figure out that this world is not his home and all superheroes are not real and comic book characters, so his abilities would scare these people of this world, so he goes on a journey to make himself a place in this world by creating him an identity and a backstory. He becomes a master thief for a while to make money to buy a place to live, then he attends night school to earn a high school diploma which he breezes by due to having Tony Stark's intelligence. This path leads to go to University of Alaska Anchorage, which he majored in mechanical engineering, clinical psychology, economics, interdisciplinary studies, which he going for his bachelor and master's degree, but he feels he needs action in his life and decides to join the college football team called the Seawolves, and he knows he has to hold back his abilities, which can be dulled down by drinking alcohol. Chapter 2: The American Couple. 1982. Cameron has been doing quite well in college and on the football team, and has also gotten involved on the hockey team also, and has created himself an excellent reputation with the school and with the ladies around campus, and became a party animal. But this year he meets the love of his life at a frat party, Rachel Valentine, who is studying to be a doctor. Rachel and Cameron hit it off well. They started spending a lot of time together, and he started helping her with her studies. They started being a big couple on campus. Cameron started working at Frigid North Co. to make extra money to wine and dine her. Cameron waits for New Year's Eve to ask her to marry her, and she says yes. They both graduated in 1983 and got married 3 days after. Rachel has got an internship with Alaska Regional Hospital. Cameron and Rachel went to Hawaii for their honeymoon for 3 months. Cameron decides to be a high school science teacher at Iceberg High, Rachel's old high school, while he will be working on his science inventions, which the government has taken interest in Cameron's works, and he starts working on special government projects, and he always decides to join the Alaska National Guard to show his patriotism. Cameron starts being quite an asset to the Guard and the government, to making a new form of technology and slowly making a way to make new weapons and armor, which will be another job for him down the line. Rachel has made an impact as an intern for the hospital, and she hasn't struggled much with the support from Cameron. She has excelled at everything the doctors could throw her way to test her. She assists in many surgeries and help out during a massive earthquake in July during the summer, and she was a godsend, and Cameron saves as many people as he could that was trapped in houses without showing that he was anything but human, while working with the National Guard to find survivors, and which he did use his abilities to save a family who was trapped inside their wrecked house, which it's got back to Rachel by way of the little girl he saved, saying he flew her out the wreckage, and when she brought up what the girl said in conversation, and Cameron, who promises never to lie to her ever, he decides to tell her the truth and show her proof, and she is stunned, but as a little girl she loved the comic books, and as the shock wore off they continued the conversation, and he tells her his whole life story, and she tells him never keep secrets, and he agreed. Cameron and Rachel become honored by the Mayor Wyatt Costner of Anchorage for their bravery and saving lives during this tragedy by granting the key to the city and having dinner with the mayor and his wife. Rachel is immediately no longer an intern. She is a full-time doctor of Alaska Regional Hospital. The mayor pulls some strings to speed up the process. Cameron is happy with his life and with Rachel, and he feels the future is bright and he needs to wear shades. Chapter 3: The Haunting of Iceberg High. 2 years later, Dr. Cameron Ford has been the talk of school as the best teacher in the school, and he loves being a teacher, and his beautiful wife Dr. Rachel Ford is a wonderful doctor who always loves her patients and what she does, and they are the talk of the town. It's August 26th, the first day of the school year. During its 30 days of complete darkness, a new girl shows up to the school, a goth girl with pink hair named Justine Madsen. She automatically hears the ghosts telling her to leave and hesitate to walk in the school, and she goes in. Justine has brought hell with her to the school in town. She recently unleashed a demon called the Conjurer, which manifests evil spirits or ghosts and gets them power and turns them into demons. That's she released by playing with Ouija board with her friends. She thought her brother Brandon, a monster hunter's girlfriend Mia, who is a Wiccan, got rid of the demon, but they was mistaken. Justine has been seeing ghosts since she was a child, but since she gotten older the ghost has gotten aggressive towards her, and since she is in town and this school it's going to get worser. The Conjurer, who is lashed to her even when she is walking in the school meeting new people and sees all the ghosts around the school. The students and teachers of this school have seen ghosts for years, but Alaska has the most evil spirits. Due to all the earthquakes and the history of the men and women who died during the greed over the gold rush decades ago. Every town has a ghost story, but the most haunted town is Arcadia City, but that's another story. The Conjurer has found its first evil spirit to wreak havoc on this town. The evil spirit who wants vengeance, a spirit who is wearing a half-burnt lab coat and a half-acid burned face, who was murdered by students, but those students are nowhere this state, so he will hunted those who are here now. The main ghosts in the building were a woman in white who goes around screaming around the dark hallways of this school, and a cool janitor named Ray who died in this school of a heart attack in the 1960s, who witnessed the death of the acid-burned face man and died 2 days later. Ray has been trying to warn the teachers and students for years about the danger of the spirits of this school for years. Dr. Ford is getting ready for class, and he introduces Justine to the class, and a boy named Alex sees Justine and is already in love, and he is being watched by his ex-girlfriend Olivia, who now wants to make Justine's life a living hell. After class, Olivia and her friends Lori, Amy, Beretta started taunting Justine about her looks and weirdness, but Alex jumps in front her and tell them to go fuck themselves. Meanwhile, a teenager boy named Tony is skipping class to hang out with his girlfriend Vicky in an empty chemistry lab. The acid man is waiting in the shadows in his half-burned lab coat and half of his face missing. Tony and Vicky started to undress in the chemistry lab, and they started to make out and lay on the floor. Acid Man slowly walks up behind Vicky and puts a bag over her head when she was just about to come, and Tony opens his eyes and sees Acid Man zip ties the bag on Vicky's head, and he throws her on the other side of the room. Acid Man takes a bottle of chemicals and jams it in Tony's mouth, and the chemicals burns through his throat and his chest, and they started to dissolve. Then Acid Man turns to a suffocating Vicky, and he pokes holes in the bag for her to breathe and pulls out a barrel of acid out of a closet and opens it, and he puts Vicky inside the barrel, and the acid is eating her alive as she's screaming in agony, and he seals her inside the acid barrel. Acid Man feels someone is watching him, and he turns to the chemistry lab door and sees Ray standing at the doorway, and Acid Man walks by him and tells him to clean up the mess. Ray is crying to himself about the death of the kids. 2 weeks later, Alex and his buddies Ralph, Luke and James are enjoying lunch in the cafeteria, and they are talking about the senior lockdown and who they are going to be shackling up with. Luke asks Alex if he is still interested in Olivia. Alex says to Luke, "No way, you have no idea how fake that bitch is, but if you want her, that's your problem." Alex is looking at Justine, who is sitting at a table with school's rejects. Brett, a kid whose father used to beat him as a kid until his mom decides to stand up and kill his father, and is in prison for manslaughter doing a 3 to 5, but lives with aunt and uncle. Tatiana, a wannabe model whose mom was Miss Alaska 1977, and as soon as she graduated high school she plans to going to New York to join the school of modeling used to be a part of Lori, Amy, Beretta and Olivia's gang, but Amy found out Tatiana was gay and she outed her and damaged her reputation. Valerie, a goth girl who enjoys talking to the dead, a lover of the occult, and her mom got knocked up by Charles Manson and she might be his daughter. Keith is a lone wolf, but hangs around the rejects when he gets lonely. Keith is a badass, but deep down he is looking for a true friendship. And lastly, Heather, the school president, captain of the debate team, and Rachel's kid sister. Heather welcomes Justine to join them for lunch, and Justine wasn't expecting someone like Heather to be so welcoming of her. Alex is looking at Justine, who is settling nicely with her new friends Olivia, Lori, Amy, Beretta are walking in the cafeteria. They see Justine joking around with the rejects and they automatically want to start trouble, but they wait for Heather to leave the table, then they proceed to go over to the rejects table to show them who runs the school. Olivia gets in Justine's when she catches Alex staring at her. Justine can't take anymore and Justine slaps Olivia. Olivia is shocked and she goes to throw a punch, and Justine counters with a punch of her own and a brawl breaks out in the middle of the cafeteria. Beretta tries to grab Justine from behind and Valerie jumps in and grabs Beretta and slams her down to the floor and breaks Beretta's nose and the process. Lori runs away to get the principal. Tatiana gets from her seat and decides to attack Amy. Alex and his boys try to break up the fight. Keith throws off his members-only jacket and he tells Brett it's time to man up, and Keith attacks Ralph and Luke and beats up the both of them. Brett is standing in front of Alex and Alex punches Brett out with one punch. Lori couldn't find the principal, but she found Dr. Ford and he runs to the cafeteria and he breaks up the fight. Principal Jimmy Soprano shows up to the school from having a lunch date with his mistress and was in a very good mood until he heard about the fighting in the cafeteria. He proposed that Dr. Ford held afternoon detention for those involved in the fight in his classroom. 4 p.m. Dr. Ford is reading an Avengers comic book while in charge of detention. There's only 30 minutes left in detention and the kids are getting restless. Amy and Beretta ask Dr. Ford uses the restroom and lets them go, but Olivia tries to go with them, but he tells her nice try, you will have to wait until they come back. Heather is in the restroom smoking pot waiting for her friends to get out of the detention and hears Amy and Beretta talking and about to come in, and she goes to hide in a stall. When they come into the restroom they smell the pot but go to the mirror to apply makeup to their face. Back in the classroom, Valerie is looking at Justine staring out the window and decides to strike up a conversation about aura, and she says that Justine has a turquoise aura around her. Olivia is having a heated conversation with Alex about what the hell is going on between him and Justine, and also that she wants him back, but he didn't know that. Ralph and Luke are staring at Tatiana's breasts, which are busting out her shirt. Keith is reading a book about robotic technology. Dr. Ford looks at his watch and decides to walk out the classroom to see what is taking Amy and Beretta so long. Amy and Beretta are having a smoke in the bathroom trying to beat the clock. Heather is still in the stall, but her lighter falls out her pocket. Beretta feels like someone is spying on them and she starts kicking the stalls and getting closer to Heather's stall. As she gets to stall, the acid man comes through the vent and grabs Beretta and throws her in the mirror, and he turns his attention to Amy as she tries to run out the door. And he grabs her by shirt and pulls her back in, and she is screaming, and he pulls out a bottle of acid and pour it in the toilet and grabs Amy by the neck and is drowning her in the toilet of acid, and Heather busts out of the stall and comes face to face with the acid man, and she sprays mace in his face and Beretta with glass in her face jumps the acid man from behind and tells Heather to run. Heather runs out the restroom down the hallway and she runs into Dr. Ford. And she is screaming he is killing them, so the kids come out of the classroom and Dr. Ford asks where they are and says is the restroom. The acid man is fighting with Beretta and he takes a large glass out the mirror and grabs her neck, jams the glass in her neck and rips off her head. Amy is crawling across the floor with the acid bubbling and the acid man is standing over her. Dr. Ford bursts through the door and sees the acid man and he spears him away from Amy. Amy crawls out of the restroom and Keith runs towards her and grabs her. Keith was staring at the rest door and hearing a loud noise. Dr. Ford is throwing the acid man around the restroom through the stalls and bashing his brains all over the place, and he thinks he killed him, and he looks at Beretta's body and he shakes his head and he closes her eyes. The acid man gets off the floor, grabs the toilet full with acid and dumps it on Dr. Ford's head while he is turned towards Beretta. Dr. Ford drops to his knees as his face is boiling in acid and then drops the whole toilet on his head, and the acid man burst out of the restroom in a full rage and he sees the kids in the hallway, and the Conjurer uses his abilities to lock down the school and turns out the power in the school. Keith is in the classroom with Amy, but he didn't know she died. Principal Soprano comes out of his office and sees all the kids running and asks them what is going on. They say they're a man with no face just killed Beretta and Dr. Ford. Principal Soprano thinks it's a prank and he goes to check it out, and it's 5 dead female spirits chained together, and grabs Principal Soprano and wrapped their chains around him, crushing him together. Ray the janitor leads them to safety and tells them to go to the gym. Valerie and Justine both know Ray is a ghost, but Justine asks him what the hell is going on, and Ray says you brought a passenger with you and he been using the spirits of this school as his own private army, and the man with no face is the leader. He has been murdering students since you've been going to this school, making the Conjurer stronger and the evil spirits, and believe me, there are many of evil spirits here. This land has been reused over and over again for the past centuries. So many different people have died on this land, evil and the good. James jumps in and says fuck the evil spirits, how do we get out of here? The Conjurer is using its powers to keep you all locked in. The only way for you to leave, you must find the Conjurer. Justine says how do we find it? Ray says he is in the darkest and the heart of this school, it's where most of the spirits are. Since these dark days and nights they are very active, and the more blood they shed, the stronger they manifest into demons. James, Luke, Ralph are grabbing weapons, bats, hockey sticks. Alex is comforting Olivia, and he telling her nothing will happen to her. Tatiana is so scared and shaking, and Heather tells Tatiana everything will be okay. We will survive this, and Tatiana tells her that she's sorry about Dr. Ford. She knows that Dr. Ford is her brother-in-law. Keith is still in the classroom, and he is looking through the crack in the door. While he is doing that, Amy's body starts moving. An evil spirit has taken control of her body. Amy gets off the desk and is slowly creeping up behind him, and Keith walks out in the hallway and Amy attacks him from behind. Keith slams her to the floor and he looks at her and says what the fuck, and she jumps at him and starts clawing at his face, and she looks at him with crazy eyes, and he starts to punching her in the face to get him off top of him. Dr. Ford wakes up in the restroom fully recovered and is pissed off and walks out the restroom and hears Keith struggling in the hallway and runs up and pulls Amy's off him. Dr. Ford puts Amy through the trophy case and pushes Amy's head through the wall and explodes her skull. Dr. Ford grabs Keith up and he asks where the rest of the kids are, and Keith says he don't know, and Keith runs to the door outside and sees that the door is smoking and feels heat from it. Dr. Ford says something is keeping us here and the kids are still here. Ray pops out the shadows that kids are safe for now, they are in the gym. Keith points out that Val says that you are a ghost. Ray confirms that he is one of the good ones. Ray explains the entire situation to Dr. Ford and Keith. Dr. Ford asks Ray if evil spirits can inhabit dead bodies. Ray says yes, but they are no longer spirits. The Conjurer has the power to turn these spirits into demons by way of bloodlust. Dr. Ford makes their way towards the gym and they start to take gunfire from an unknown force, which is a squadron of World War II Japanese soldiers. One of the soldiers tries to run at Keith with his bayonet, and Keith counters him by slams him into a tree in the walkway between the main school and the gym. Keith cocks the rifle and Dr. Ford is fighting through them, and with 5 minutes that battle over with. James leads the kids back out the gym, but the acid man has a tub of acid hanging over the door. James, Ralph and Luke open the door. The acid dumps on all three of them and they drop to the floor screaming, and the acid man walks out the shadows and walks into the gym. Luke gets up with a hockey stick with his shoulder being eaten away, and he swings at the acid man and breaks the stick on his face, and the acid man grabs Luke's eating away shoulder and pulls him towards him and takes the hockey stick and jams it through his eyes all the way through the back of the head. James and Ralph's bodies are eaten alive by the acid and the bodies are being dragged away by the darkness. Olivia and Alex are running through the pool area. Olivia gets knocked into the pool by a bloody-faced cowboy dressed in black, and he attacks Alex and pulls out a straight razor. Heather, Tatiana, Valerie and Justine are standing together in the middle of the gym. The acid man approaches them with an army of demons surrounding them. Keith and Dr. Ford show up at the gym entrance, and Dr. Ford smells acid and Keith cocks the automatic weapon he got off the dead Japanese soldier, and they run in the gym and Keith opens fire on the acid man and his army. The bloody-faced cowboy slices up Alex's face, and Olivia attacks the bloody-faced cowboy and puts a life preserve around his neck and pushes him in the pool, and she grabs Alex and runs. The acid man says to Dr. Ford, "I thought I killed you, Dr. Ford says likewise. The demons are dropping dead around the gym. Keith gives Heather, Tatiana, Valerie and Justine guns he took off the dead soldiers, and they fight the demons. Acid Man and Dr. Ford, aka the Sledgehammer, square off. Acid Man throws a bottle of acid towards to the sledgehammer, and the sledgehammer flies towards Acid Man and flies in, bashing his head in, and flies to the main school and using the Acid Man's body to break the barrier that the Conjurer has on the school, and Acid Man's body is burning up just like when a rock comes through the Earth's atmosphere and the Conjurer loses his hold on the school. The Acid Man's body complete dissolves into nothing. Keith leads the kids into the parking lot, except for Valerie, and Justine gets held up when the Conjurer comes out of the shadows and grabs them, and the door closes behind Keith and the kids. Heather comes to the door and Dr. Ford tells them, "Just go get help, just tell them a bunch of crazy people attack us and go." Dr. Ford goes to track down Valerie and Justine. The Conjurer has Ray trapped and is upset that he has helped these kids and Dr. Ford, and he devours Ray's spirit. One of Ray's allies, known around the school as the White Witch, comes out the shadows to tell him the Conjurer has Valerie and Justine underneath the surface of the cafeteria, which is where he has been hiding. There is a hidden tunnel, and she shows him where they are. The Conjurer wants to posse Ned Justine back, taking over her body, and wants to use Valerie as a blood sacrifice. Alex and Olivia are being chased by evil spirits as they make their way back in the main building. Dr. Ford is back to Sledgehammer altitude when he sees a gang of demons protecting the entrance, and he fights through them and sees the Conjurer is inside Justine and about to kill Valerie, and she welcomes the death, but in a microsecond the sledgehammer flies Justine's away from Valerie and tells the Conjurer to get out of her. The White Witch says you will need a priest to perform an exorcism or her soul is lost. He remembers at this moment the things his mother told him about his abilities and explains to him there is no limit for him. The Conjurer laughs, she belongs to me, and Valerie says just leave her man, and the sledgehammer closes his eyes and stabs his arms inside Justine's body, attempting to pull of the demon out of her body, and it comes out the most ugly thing you would ever see, and the sledgehammer, using another ability that is dormant, and burns the Conjurer alive with his bare hands, roasting him nothing but ashes, and there is an earthquake due to the amount of power is using in this unstable environment, and they running out the tunnel. Valerie gets stuck in the tunnel with the sledgehammer and tunnel collapse on them. The sledgehammer wakes up and pulls Valerie out the tunnel. The police and ambulance showed up at the school. The police searched the school and found dead deformed bodies, and they found Olivia and Alex and the classroom. Dr. Ford is at the hospital talking with Rachel and Heather about what happened at the school. Valerie has minor injuries but is in a coma, but when she wakes she has welcomed the evil spirits to inhabit her body with her tattoos on her body. Sheriff Rudy Bridger shows up at the hospital to take the survivors of this ordeal, including Dr. Ford, to the police station for further questioning about what happened. Dr. Ford had already told mostly all the kids except Olivia and Alex just to tell them it was a bunch of psychos in masks that attacked them. But Olivia and Alex start talking about ghosts, demons and evil spirits, and how Dr. Ford is a badass motherfucker and he is like a superhero or something. Sheriff talks with Mayor Wyatt Costner, who tells him to burn all the dead deformed bodies, condemn the school, and he says we can level that son of a bitch and the whole foundation and turn that son of a bitch into a goddamn Walmart. All the kids will be transferred to Anchorage High. You need to get your daughter Olivia and everybody on the same page. Anybody that doesn't comply with that, you send their asses to the institute. Sheriff goes back to talk to Dr. Ford, lays out the ultimatum, and he thanks him for saving his daughter. Dr. Ford explains everything to the kids and they all agree. The sheriff and mayor covered up everything, and the police found 9 bodies inside containers in the old chemistry lab. After a couple days they found over 33 bodies in the walls of the school. It seems the school spirits has been busy. Mayor and the sheriff did not know how to respond to bodies that been there over the years. It's became a media frenzy, who is saying there is a serial killer loose in the city who has been working with the psychos who broke into the building and attacked Dr. Ford and the kids. It's just a crazy time right now. Putting Dr. Cameron Ford is in the headlines as a hero, and Rachel is proud of her man, gaining more momentum. They don't have a teaching job available at Anchorage High. Cameron has become a paramedic and volunteer fireman. Cameron decides he wants to be in the saving lives business. Chapter 4, Trio of Terror. Friday, October 30th, 1987, 2 months after the haunting of Iceberg High. Kids are getting out of school to enjoy this fall weather and going trick or treating this weekend. While the teenagers from Anchorage High are planning a big Halloween bash at a secret location will be determined by Johnny Costner, the captain of the Anchorage High varsity football team and one of Mayor Costner's kids, who is dating Olivia, the sheriff's daughter. Heather, the ex-school president, is now dating Keith, and Keith has joined varsity football as a receiver. Lori is dating Tatiana, who are both on the Honor Society, who both have plans to go to Canada after they graduate. Justine had left with her family to Arcadia City. Alex has PTSD due to what happened to him in the school and loss of his best friends, and Alex has become a weird kid at Anchorage High and has been the only one to visit Valerie, who is still in a coma, and Alex is angry for the fact that they were able to walk away and forget all about the horror of Iceberg High. Alex wants to make them remember, and he has the scars of what the bloody face cowboy did to him. Later on that night, Alex takes Valerie out of the hospital to Iceberg High, where it still stands. After the additional bodies were found, he couldn't destroy it like he wanted due to its needs to be searched fully to make sure there are no more bodies. Alex wants to make a blood ritual to awaken Valerie. Alex goes to his car and opening the trunk, and it's Brett tied up dressed in a Pizza Hut uniform, and he takes him in the building and him right next to Valerie, and Alex pulls out a straight razor and Brett starts screaming, and Alex starts cutting Brett's veins and slits his neck, and he bleeds all over Valerie, and Alex slits his wrists and combines his blood with Brett, and he splits Valerie's, slits her wrists and combines all the blood together. And Alex says, "I was afraid of the darkness and now I welcome it," and he takes off Valerie's gown and starts to read her tattoos, which are spells, and Valerie wakes up and she shares the evil spirits inside her with a kiss. Alex is now as powerful as her. They are no longer Alex and Valerie. She is Beta and he is Delta. They are demons, and the Acid Man comes out of the shadows, whose body was completely destroyed by the sledgehammer, and decides to take the body of Brett, who is the Alpha due to being the most dominant spirit in the school. The evil spirits of this foundation no longer exist. Alpha, Beta, Delta are in the Dead Forces book known as the Trio of Terror. And now they are not bound to the school, now they can go anywhere they want. Saturday 11 a.m. October 31st, Cameron wakes up when Rachel kisses him, and they are making passionate love for about a few minutes. Rachel goes downstairs in her pink robe and sees Heather getting breakfast started in the kitchen. Keith shows up at the door and Heather goes to the door and she kisses him, and the door closes and Cameron comes downstairs dressed in his paramedic uniform. Cameron's work pal Julie shows up to pick him up. Cameron kisses Rachel and leaves. Heather tells Rachel about the Halloween bash. Keith really don't want to go, and he brings up that it's bad taste due to the kids that are here anymore. Rachel says, "You gotta get moving on with life, don't this event set you back?" "But I understand, Keith, maybe Heather you should just stay home and just watch some horror movies and relax, and you will have the place to yourself. Me and Cameron will be at work and tonight will be crazy." Heather didn't know she and Keith would have the place to themselves. Heather changes her mind about the party. Alpha likes the idea of taking the souls of the children and becoming powerful, but Alpha has the sledgehammer on his mind, and Beta tells him about his wife and sister-in-law. Alpha is focusing on making the sledgehammer pay. Johnny finally reveals that the secret Halloween bash will take place in the old Iceberg High School gym, which was left untouched by the state, but the party has already started. Olivia is furious with Johnny, but was able to calm her down, so Olivia reveals to Lori and Tatiana what Johnny has done. Tatiana calls Heather, who is setting up the house for a romantic night with Keith, but plans change when Heather finds out that the party is taking place in the old gym, and Keith returns with flowers and goes straight to kisses Heather, and she welcomes it, but she interrupts and says, "We got a big problem. Johnny is throwing the Halloween bash in our old gym." Keith's mind flashbacks to what happened months ago and goes to his car and pulls out 2 automatic Japanese submarine gun and says, "We have to stop the party. We need to let Cameron know," and Heather does have not enough time. Johnny's teammates show up to high school in a black van with a naked woman spread eagle with a football between her legs. But they are on the wrong side of building getting out the van. Scotty, Adam, Cole and the waterboy named Doug, who are pulling a keg of beer out the van, and they are being watched by Beta and Delta. Scotty realizes he is on the wrong side, but he hears the music blasting and decides to through the old school building with Adam and Cole following him, and he tells Doug to move the van to the other side and also tells him to put the keg back in the car. Doug struggles to put the keg into the van, and Beta shows up behind Doug and startles him. Beta takes off her leather jacket and shows her tattoos, and her breasts are busting out her shirt. Doug can't believe that a beautiful woman like her is talking to him, and she tells him her name is Valerie, and she pushes him in the van and closes the door behind, and she throws him on the floor and starts ripping off his clothes, and he said, "Do you want to know my name?" and Beta says, "It doesn't matter, you just meet to me," and she kisses him and she rips out his tongue and her face changes to demonic and he screams and she riding him with him inside her, and she slicing him with her claws and she starts eating flesh from his chest and she rips off his face. Scotty, Adam and Cole are walking the old hallways and drinking a beer and are getting closer to the party. Adam says he got to piss and he sees the restroom and he goes to it and he tells Scotty to come with him and Scotty says, "What the fuck for? What, you are afraid of ghosts or some shit? Dude, you are a big fucking dude. You are a linebacker with 32 sacks on your record. You are afraid of a little old school." And he drinks his beer until it's empty and throws the can at Adam and walks away. "I am going to get laid, motherfucker." Cole follows him. Adam goes into the restroom. Adam realizes he is in the girls' restroom and starts urinating in a stall, and he hears someone softly screaming help and walking out the stall, and the room lights gets darker and he sees the smashed mirror which he didn't see the before, and he sees a girl laying on the floor and he rushes to her, and when he turns her over it's Beretta with her head hanging off her body, and he is frightening, and she tells him welcome to hell and jams a piece of glass in his right eye and rips out his eyeball, and she eats it, and he backs out of the restroom and hears Beretta screaming over and over, "Hell is coming for you." Delta is standing behind Adam while he screams at Scotty and Cole, who just entered the gym where the party is raging on 40 students strong. Delta pulls out a razor and slashes down Adam's back, and Adam falls to the floor and drags him back to the girls' restroom and breaks Adam's leg and feeds him to Beretta, who is eating Adam alive, and Delta goes behind Beretta and takes off her bloody pants and starts doing her from behind while she eating Adam, and Delta's demonic face is showing and Delta staring at Adam, who has nothing but fright on his face, and his screams are drawn out by the loud music from the gym. Tatiana and Lori are very uncomfortable about being at this party and go to Olivia and tell her that they are getting bad vibes from this place. Johnny welcomes Scotty and Cole to the party and puts a beer in their hands. Johnny sees Tatiana and Lori trying to make Olivia changes their minds. Keith and Heather shows up the school and they see Scotty's van, and they get out the car and goes to the van, and they see blood dripping from the van's door, and Keith opens it and it's unclear whose body inside the van. Body parts are everywhere and blood is everywhere, and Keith is throwing up, and Heather grabs Keith and says, "We need to end this party," and Keith cocks the gun and starts walking through the old high school. Heather remembers Principal Soprano has a CB radio in his office, and they go towards the office and they see evil spirits walking through the halls. Delta walks out of the girls' restroom smoking a cigarette, and he sees Beta walks by him with metal chains in her hands, and she gives him a pair of chains and they chain up the gym door on the outside. 5 dead spirits chained together are sneaking up on Heather and Keith turns around and opens fire on the 5 spirits, and the bullets are killing the 5 spirits due to the weapon being used by the dead, and the bullets are unlimited. Gunfire travels to the gym and the partygoers get scared. Johnny tries to calm down the kids, and Olivia looks at Johnny with a look and she grabs Tatiana and Lori. Heather cocks her gun and she sees a gang of dead cowboys led by the bloody-faced cowboy that torments Alex, and they open fire on Heather and Keith. Another brick in the wall is being played by Pink Floyd is playing on intercom during this gunfight. The Alpha/Acid Man busted through the window in the gym along with Beta and Delta. Beta and Delta start attacking and tearing the partygoers apart. Johnny sees the carnage and decides to pump up Scotty and Cole and tells them, "We need to save the women," and they go in the back and grab some weapons, and Johnny says, "I fucked up, I got to make this up." Beta attacks Tatiana and Lori spears Beta away from and starts raging on Beta. Then Lori realizes she fighting Valerie and she hesitates, and Beta throws her hand through Lori's chest and rips out her heart, and she eats it, and she sees Tatiana's crying, and Olivia grabs Tatiana and attempts runs towards the opening window, and all the other kids are dying. They are dropping like flies, some are wounded. Heather dives into the principal's office. Keith thinks the cowboys are truly dead and until he attacked by the bloody-faced cowboy and he knocks the gun out of his hand and Keith pulls out a Swiss Army knife and starts stabbing the bloody-faced cowboy in the face and the eyes and jams the knife inside the cowboy and attempts to tear off his head and bloody-faced cowboy shoots Keith with his pistol and Keith is wounded and he goes for his gun and bloody-faced cowboy starts healing. And he grabs Keith's Swiss Army knife and says to Keith, "I am going scalp me a little Indian," and turns Keith over and Keith has the gun and unload the gun all over the bloody-faced cowboy tearing him to pieces and Keith gets his knife back and he goes into the principal's office and he sees Heather trying to get the radio working. She try the sheriff department, they think it is a prank. And she changes the channel she is going to see if she can call Cameron's ambulance dispatch. The Acid Man calls out to Olivia and Tatiana and says, "Do you remember me?" Kids scattered around the gym moaning and groaning. Johnny, Scotty and Cole comes out in the gym with baseball bats and Johnny yells out to the Acid Man, "Hey you ugly motherfucker, leave my woman and fight someone your own size, bitch." Beta and Delta stand behind him and go to confront them. Johnny, Scotty and Cole look at each other and Johnny says, "If we are going to die, at least we are dying over pussy." And they rushed Alpha, Beta and Delta. Heather screaming on the CB radio about what going on the school. Julia hears the message and Cameron is get back on the ambulance after delivering a patient to a hospital and Julia says, "Isn't that your sister-in-law?" and Cameron says, "Call the sheriff, it's not a prank," and Julia tells her to go and he got to stay at the hospital to do paperwork and he waits for her to leave and he flies to the school. Cole gets his throat ripped out by Beta with her teeth and starts to devour him. Delta takes the bat from Scotty and beats him to death. Johnny drops the bat and jumps out the broken window and breaks his leg screaming, "Call 911, call 911, call 911" over and over again. The Acid Man turns his attention to Olivia and Tatiana. Cameron sees Heather and Keith and they head to the gym. The Sledgehammer breaks the down to the gym and he sees all the kids barely moving and he tells Heather and Cole, "Get them out of here." Olivia and Tatiana trying to runs towards Heather and Cole and Beta snatches Tatiana and rips off her arm. The Sledgehammer flies towards Tatiana and starts throwing Beta around the room. The Acid Man disappears in the shadows. Keith, Olivia and Heather lead the injured kids into the parking lot. Delta attacking the Sledgehammer with a bat. Tatiana is bleeding out. Beta slices out her body and sprays her blood on the dead partygoers and comes back from dead and they start to devour Tatiana as she's been eaten alive. The Sledgehammer sees the undead coming towards him and he smashes Delta's head in the sound system, electrocuting him. Outside the school, a man in a red leather jacket with short black hair and a black goatee and carrying a red shotgun and Heather, Cole and Olivia ask him where is going. He says to him to finish this. The undead grabs the Sledgehammer from behind and starts tearing flesh into his arms and he fights them off and Delta has recovered from being electrocuted. The Sledgehammer is smashing the hell out of the undead. The Acid Man takes a barrel of acid and dump it on top the Sledgehammer and the Sledgehammer is in pain and his skin is melting. Beta starts licking the acid-melting flesh and the rest of the undead jump on top of Sledgehammer, busting his explosive shotgun shells out of his blessed shotgun, killing the undead that surrounded the Sledgehammer's body. Delta approaches the man with a bat and swings the shotgun towards the bat and burns the flesh off Delta with the holy shotgun and blows off Delta's head. Beta runs at the man and she dodges his shots and she knocks the shotgun out his hands and he slides on holy brass knuckles and he starts beating in Beta's face. The Acid Man notices that the Sledgehammer is starting to regenerate and Beta throws the man away from her and he grabs the shotgun and he shoots it at her. Beta jumps out the window. The Acid Man is face to face with the man with the shotgun and the Acid Man runs towards the main building and the Acid Man is taking him to the old chemistry lab. The Acid Man jumps the man from behind and grabs the shotgun and throws it in the hallway. The man spears the Acid Man into a radiator and starts to bashes his head into the radiator and they are fighting all over the lab. The Sledgehammer wakes up fully healed and goes towards the noise. The acid man grabs the man by the throat and slams his head with a microscope, and the acid man grabs a cloth and plug the sink and grabs some corrosive acid and pour it in a barrel and grabs the man who is bleeding out his head and tries to stick his head in the barrel, and the man tries to fight him, and the sledgehammer grabs the shotgun and walks in the doorway, and he looks, the acid man sees the sledgehammer and he drops the man, and the sledgehammer unloads the shotgun on the acid man and he falls headfirst inside the barrel of acid. The man gets off the floor and pours holy water inside the barrel and seals it. The man says, "It's nice to meet you, Dr. Ford," and Cameron says, "Who the fuck are you?" The man says, "I am Brandon Madsen, Justine's big brother, and you and I got a lot to talk about." As Sheriff Bridger shows up at the old high school, too many wounded children. Brandon is burning down the high school and gym. The sledgehammer and Brandon disappear from the scene. Heather and Keith are the unsung heroes. But Johnny says he was going to get help, and that's his cover story. Brandon shows up at the hospital checking to see any of the victims being possessed by a demon. But everyone is okay. Rachel attending to all the kids, and Cameron shows up and she hugs him, and they go to the cafeteria and they talk for a whole, and Rachel walks out and Brandon walks and sits down at the table and says, "You got the abilities to really fuck up these supernatural forces, but you need knowledge. Some of them can't be killed by beating them to death. Some you going need to perform rituals or to use blessed weapons such as holy water stakes, silver bullets, or a blessed sword or gun. There is a world of supernatural forces, vampires, werewolves, etc. We have a network of hunters that do their best to deal these problems, but once I get done training you with what I know, then you will be unstoppable." Cameron says, "I was just doing my duty to protect these kids, and I do appreciate you saving my ass and you trying to give me the knowledge. But I am not a hunter." Brandon says, "You do know that one of the demons got away and soon she will plan her revenge and will come back." Brandon stands up and gives Cameron a book of notes of how to kill each supernatural monster and gives him his mercenary card just in case he needs him. Cameron says, "You are a fucking merc." Brandon says, "Monster hunting does not pay well. Got to make my money somewhere," and he shakes Cameron's hand and walks out the door. Brandon pulls out a cigarette and lights up and gets on his motorcycle and rides off in the sunrise. Cameron walks out the cafeteria and looks at all the injured kids and sees Rachel working on them, and he sees Heather and Olivia crying about the death of Tatiana. Keith is standing by a vending machine staring into space. Beta is walking on the highway and injured and gets picked up by a truck driver, and she tells the truck driver she is Valerie, and he asks where she is going and she says anywhere but here, and he is heading to Canada, and she says that's good, and the truck driver turns on the radio and Gimme Shelter playing on the radio as they ride off to Canada. The sledgehammer will return.